And wake up, everyone. It is time for Redacted on this Thursday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
And on the show today, we are going to deep dive what the deep state has planned for this election because, well, we keep seeing repeated assassination attempts, the cover-up of the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, the cremation of a body, the wiping of this guy's apartment complex. But they will stop at nothing. We're going to look at how the deep state and the media are preparing us for 47 days from now. Can you believe it? 47 days till Election Day, and it's going to be crazy.
It has been so far.
Yeah.
It's also crazy in Russia. Russia has thwarted a major attack from Ukraine and launched an attack of their own. Meanwhile, Zelensky says he's got a victory plan. So we're going to tell you what that plan is, you guys. It's concepts of a plan. If you've been enjoying those Trump's memes about his plan to replace Obamacare, that's now become a joke inside of our house. Clayton, do you plan to take the kids to school today?
I have a concept of a plan. I don't have a plan, but I have a concept of a plan.
Right. Also, Jerome Powell admitting that massive illegal immigration has tanked employment. Now we have unemployment. That's something the Democrats are pretending is not happening, but it's happening. We're going to take a look at that.
Also, the United Nations has a big summit this weekend. Yes, it's their pact for the future, and they're keeping this hidden from you. In fact, the drafts of this are being kept from you, so we don't even know what the final documents even look like. Think of it like the UN 2.0, the pandemic treaty, the United Nations coming together for their big summit to sign off on the plan for you, for your future. What will that mean for carbon passports? What will that mean for your ability to travel? What is the next pandemic plan? All of that being discussed this weekend in New York. So we're going to have a firsthand look at that today on the show. So good to see all of you guys here on this Thursday. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see all of you guys. I should mention, hey, tomorrow we're going to have a members only live stream for just our members who are part of the Redacted Plus community. So be sure to join us and hang out. We're just going to do a Q&A day and hang out with all of our supporters. So good to see all of you guys on a Friday, a special day to give back and hang out with all of you guys. So we're going to get to this deep state preparing for the election turmoil in just a second. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Hallow. And my gosh, right now, this is what we need, don't we? We absolutely need the number one app in the world for Christian prayer and meditation. You're just taking a few days out, a few moments out of your day to relax and just learn how to pray, learn how to meditate. Whether you simply want to learn more about prayer or you've been praying for years, this will be a great way to deepen your prayer life and grow closer to Source. Whether you call it God, whether you call it Source, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. In short, daily sessions over 2 weeks, an all-star lineup of spiritual leaders. Guests will give you all of the essentials to build a rich prayer life. Right now, you can download Hallow for 3 months free by going to hallow.com/redacted, and you can just download the app very easily. Download Hallow for Download Hallow for 3 months free. That's hard to say. Download Hallow for 3 months free. Hallow.com/redacted to get that extra 3 months for free. We're going to need it as we head into election season. So I'll ask you this question. Why are the New York Times, Axios Media, the Detroit Free Press, I'm running USA Today, and the state of Pennsylvania now all telling us that we will not have a presidential winner on election night? I'll answer this one for you. They are conditioning us to get ready for a post-election turmoil in the United States, dare I say a civil war. Just so you understand, the media did this to us in 2020. They laid the groundwork for this election, for the 2020 election as well, telling us not to expect a winner on that evening. I mean, it was stunning. Hold strong. Hold strong. Don't worry about it. Your boy Biden will eventually come out on top. This was the New York Times in 2020. How the media could get the election story wrong. We may not know the results for days, maybe weeks, the New York Times warned us. So it's time to rethink election night. This was back in 2020. Here is The Guardian in 2020, warning us then, will the U.S. media call the right winner on election night? Don't count on it. We can't rely on the media to call the election fairly. Here's what we need to know about it. And in fact, we all went to bed that night. America, the United States of America, went to bed that night. The polls closed. Right? This is bedtime. Polls closed. Americans going to bed. See that there? Closed. Polls are closed. Polls are closed. Reporting in 59% of precincts, 64% of precincts, 83% of precincts, 94% of precincts reporting. Polls closed across America. Look at those numbers. 54% Michigan, Pennsylvania, 57 to 41%. Georgia, 53 to 46%, 54 to 44%, 51. I mean, those numbers are pretty staggering. So America goes to bed, and surprise, 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 like my favorite Instagram meme. Yes. Surprise, surprise.
Wasn't it?
It was. The clock struck midnight. Donald Trump was leading in all of those battleground states: Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and then, well, something happened. What happened? Well, as LifeSite News explained in a great analysis piece, overnight on election night, the numbers flipped. Of course, Joe Biden, a candidate who struggled to attract even, modest crowds at that point to his rallies, somehow garnered the most votes in American history. Look at how the liberal USA Today even showed Biden rallies. Notice the date on this, right before Election Day. Look at that. Scenes from Joe Biden's 2020 campaign rallies. That's the photo they chose to lead it off.
Okay.
Here's another Biden rally. Look at this. Look at all these excited people at a Biden rally. One guy so excited he's a reporter sitting there on a computer. There's like 5 people who are not related to Biden. Look at the Secret Service agents, and then Jill Biden, and then like 4 people.
That guy's probably a reporter.
And the other guy with a laptop is another reporter. Anyway, and then it's amazing. And it really is amazing. On election night, Joe Biden received 81 million votes, a staggering 15 million more votes than Hillary Clinton did just 4 years earlier, more than President Obama. Again, more votes than any American president in history. He is a hero. I mean, he's my hero. 81 million votes. How do you pull that off? It is amazing. You can see the excitement in these voters' faces right behind all these COVID masks. You can see their excitement. So now the media are doing it again. Now it's called preconditioning. Just so you understand preconditioning, it's the same way that President Obama's production company produced and released a movie last year called Civil War. That's called preconditioning. Yes, Obama's production company behind this Ethan Hawke film. And what's her name? Jessica. I'm pretty sure that's Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts.
You're the worst at this.
Oh, my God. I forgot.
Jessica, I'm sure, is her cousin, I think.
Jessica Roberts. Yeah.
I just made that up.
Jessica Rabbit. So that's preconditioning. Don't take my word for it, though. Listen to what the New York Times just published this week on what to expect on election night. This is New York Times this week. Harris or Trump, once again, election results could take a while. More Americans are using mail-in ballots, which takes longer to count than those cast in person. In several battleground states, a winner may not be apparent on November 5th. Of course. Quote, there will be no clear and immediate winner on election night, says the New York Times, and that early returns could give a false impression of who will ultimately prevail.
You know where this sounds so familiar? I'm thinking Germany, Pakistan. In recent history, This has been happening where the people's candidate, they go to bed and that candidate is winning, and then overnight something happens. It's just, this sequel sucks. I've heard this one before. I've read this one before. This is being well played.
Yeah, you've seen this movie before. Someone in the chat on a Rumble says that the Civil War movie, I didn't see it, so I'm not going to watch that movie. I'm not giving any money to the Obama production company from watching that movie, but someone said that movie, Civil War movie, was just a lame movie about Trump derangement syndrome. So there will be no clear and immediate winner, the New York Times says. Well, they're not the only ones. Time magazine. Why we might not know the winner on election night. So Time magazine also getting in on the liberal action here. Remember, you have to remember the New York Times, Time magazine, CBS News. They're frankly mouthpieces of the deep state, the CIA. As we've had an FBI whistleblower here on the show explain to us that if they ever want to leak information, fake stories, plant stories into the media, they first go to the New York Times, the Washington Post, Time magazine also on that list. They just funnel these stories to these liberal magazines and liberal newspapers and get this message out there. That's what they do. So these are just this is all part of an agenda. Time magazine, why we might not know the winner on election night. Axios, 2020 deja vu all over again. Why the 2024 election, it could take days to call, Axios says. Here's what Axios says more deeply. It's a near guarantee that Donald Trump will declare victory the night of November 5th, and the margin won't matter, Axios says. It won't matter whether he's accurate and he's actually won or whether he was defeated soundly. Quote, I think we should absolutely expect the super spreaders of disinformation will parrot the lies about the election in the immediate aftermath. That's what Axios says. And not to be outdone, the state of Pennsylvania, a battleground state, my home state, the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes. I would argue it's more important than any other swing state, not just because it's my home state, but this election cycle, Pennsylvania will determine who wins this presidential race this year. Not Florida, not Ohio, but all eyes on Pennsylvania because of those 19 electoral votes. If President Trump carries that, then those other states and their fewer electoral votes really don't matter from a swing state perspective. All eyes on Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania publishing this, letting us know Pennsylvania won't always know the final results of all races on election night. Any changes in results that occur as counties continue to count ballots are not evidence that an election is rigged. So Pennsylvania wants to get out in front in this and let you know that Pennsylvania might be too close to call. Probably not on election night. You won't know who won Pennsylvania.
I feel like they should have put the word not necessarily evidence. If they're saying we know already that the election is not rigged and the election has not happened, that's a preordained conclusion that makes me a little nervous. So they're saying we already know, full stop, election's not rigged. Well, it hasn't happened yet. Right. So
right.
let's leave open a possibility of a corruption, given we have a lot of corruption.
What brains in our Rumble chat says source? Trust us.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly. Right.
So they know into the future the election's not rigged. I don't think anybody can say that with full certainty. Nobody can see the future.
Pennsylvania can.
Okay.
They're warning us all, and you should listen to your liberal media. You should listen to our liberal media. You should listen to all of the liberal media sources like the Detroit Free Press up there in Michigan, also getting in on the bandwagon today. Delay in reporting election results in Detroit, Wayne, and Macomb counties raises concerns. So they are warning us in Michigan that we're going to see delays. So I guess if the deep state keeps trying to kill Trump and can't succeed, they'll have to figure out another way. And that's why they're getting us ready for this election turmoil. Meanwhile, Tucker Carlson just wrote this morning and asks, why are the deep state liberals trying to kill Trump? Here's what Tucker writes. Any political candidate's might can be measured by their opponent's fear of losing to them. First of all, that's a beautiful sentence. Just look at that sentence for a second. Any political candidate's might can be measured by their opponent's fear of losing to them. If the other side thinks you're going to win, then your campaign is going pretty well. Based on the past 2.5 months, it's clear that Donald Trump's opponents know he's going to win. Why else would they have tried to kill him twice? America hasn't seen anything like this in decades, and even though political violence has become bizarrely common, it's worth taking a step back to acknowledge just how sick the people perpetrating it are. There's nothing less democratic than killing off the race's front runner, but they keep trying to do it anyway. And they keep calling Trump a threat to democracy. Peter Doocy asked Karine Jean-Pierre that very question at the White House press briefing. Basically, why are you guys trying to get Trump killed by calling him a threat? Because there are crazy people out there that are listening to you right now. Here was her response.
2 days since somebody allegedly tried to kill Donald Trump again. And you're here at the podium in the White House briefing room calling him a threat.
President Biden has been clear-eyed about the threat that the former president represents to our democracy.
How many more assassination attempts on Donald Trump until the president and the vice president and you pick a different word to describe Trump other than threat?
Peter, if anything from this administration, I actually completely disagree with the premise of your question, the question that you're asking. It is also incredibly dangerous in the way that you're asking it, because American people are watching. And to say that from an administration who has consistently condemned political violence, from an administration where the president called the former president and was thankful, grateful that he was okay, from an administration who has called out January 6th, called out the attack of Paul Pelosi, called out and said we need to lower the temperature after the Butler incident. And now for you to make that kind of comment in your question, because your question involved a comment and a statement. And, it is, that is also incredibly dangerous.
So Peter Doocy is dangerous. Mm-hmm. So she, a moment ago, calls President Trump a threat to democracy.
Right. And he's saying these are dangerous words. And she said, no, I'm not you.
Well, I don't call him a threat. You just said that President Biden labels him a threat to democracy. At what point are you going to stop using that language that he's a threat to? He was president for 4 years. What threat was there to our democracy? I don't know if you've looked at the country right now, if you've stared at it in the face, but it's been a disaster. So what threat exactly? Could she clarify? But Peter Doocy is the threat to democracy. He's dangerous. And the threats keep on coming. Overnight, we learned that more than 20 Trump supporters at a rally in Tucson who were predetermined to be in this roped off area to shake Trump's hand suddenly came down with a chemical burn. Chemical burns to their eyes. They had to be rushed to the emergency room. What in the world is going on? This was at this Tucson rally just a few days ago. Watch.
More than 2,000 people filled up the Tucson Music Hall Thursday to hear Donald Trump's first speech in Tucson this campaign as Election Day nears. Some of his biggest supporters were allowed to sit behind him on stage, supporters like Myra Rodriguez, a former director of Planned Parenthood with a notable shift to being pro-life. In 2016, she sat behind presidential candidate Hillary Clinton on stage at an event. Now she supports Donald Trump. She enjoyed the rally, but once she left, everything changed.
As soon as we left and I stepped outside, I started feeling like my eyes were burning.
At first, she thought it might be allergies. She lives near Phoenix. By the time she got home, it was so bad she decided to go to the emergency room.
The emergency room staff keeps saying, from the triage nurse to the PA, and are you sure you don't get spray anything? Your symptoms look like you were sprayed something.
The News 4 Tucson investigators spoke to her the morning after the rally, Friday last week. That morning, she was nearly blind.
I can't see anything. When I try to open my eyes, it's like a white cloud covered. It hurts. It hurts a lot to open my eyes. I have this cold cloth that I put on and I take off all the time. But this is horrible.
She says the doctors weren't able to determine what exactly caused it. Her initial thought of allergies went out the window when she heard from several others seated next to her at the rally that also ended up seeking medical attention with the same symptoms.
Yeah. Nothing to see here. Just move on. Someone in our chat just said, nothing to see here. Just move on. So you have an assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania that kills a Trump supporter, right? Yeah, collateral damage to them. You have another attempt in Florida. You have this in Tucson almost simultaneously, or a few days actually prior to what happened in Florida. Nothing to see here. Don't worry about it. Sources I've spoken with today tell me that someone dusted this area with a chemical agent, and that if they take environmental samples and compare it to the blood work of the victims, they should be able to isolate it and figure out what it was. Someone in the chat is asking, what do you think it was? What kind of chemical? Was it a chlorine gas attack? This is maybe a possibility because that chlorine could carry out similar symptoms like this, but we don't know until someone isolates it and figures it out. So there are 47 days left. How many more times will they try to kill Trump? I mean, it seems like they're going for broke at this point.
Yeah. Well, we have more news to get to. We're going to talk about, coming up here, Russia launching a massive attack on Ukraine. As Zelensky said, don't worry about it. You guys, he's got a victory plan. So we're going to take a look at what that plan is, or concepts of a plan. Also, Jerome Powell is admitting that illegal immigration is, in fact, causing unemployment. You think? Well, we're going to look at that data. Plus a UN conference this weekend coming up to rule the world. What do those globalists have in store for you? Well, we better watch because we're the pawns in their game. So we're going to take a look at that as well. But first, hey, did you see this story yesterday? Billionaire hedge fund manager John Paulson has said that if Kamala wins the presidency, what he's going to do is pull all of his money from the market, go into cash, and go into gold because of the uncertainty in the markets. Well, that's why we talk a lot about investing in precious metals as something that you should learn for yourself. Our friends over at Lear Capital can teach you. They have prepared a report and a plan. And, honestly, all you have to do is call this number here and say, I think I'm interested in this. This is what I have. This is what I'd like to learn. And they can walk you through it step by step by step. In fact, we did that very thing, and they gave us a personalized plan, not knowing anything about us. They're friendly, they're fantastic, and they will teach you to invest in gold, not just as an investment, but also a hedge against an inflation and monetary preservation. So right now you can look into not just gold, but also silver. And in fact, we are invested in both in our portfolio, about half of each. And they can teach you which type of metal works for you, how you can own it, either inside your house or inside an IRA. They'll teach you. So go to LearRedacted.com or call them at 800-613-3557 and get your free guide and just have a conversation. In fact, if I were you, I'd prefer to just have a call with them rather than just send some emails, because a lot can get lost in translation and you get a personal consultant. So once again, it's either LearRedacted.com or call 800-613-3557. Well, Russia says it has swatted down another attack from Ukraine in the Kursk region, and it cost 300 Ukrainian lives. Now, recall recently, President Trump said they're not giving us the truth about Ukrainian deaths. This is true. They downplay it. Russia also claims to have conducted a major strike on Ukraine's key military communications facility, as well as a number of other high priority targets. This is according to the Defense Ministry in Moscow. In a statement, they said that they used Russian warplanes, drones, missiles, and artillery, and they successfully, quote, hit the main center of special radio communications in the main intelligence dictorate of the armed forces of Ukraine, plus other critical airfield infrastructure facilities. But don't worry about it, Harry. I got it taken care of.
Don't worry about it, Harry.
Is that the quote from Dumb and Dumber?
Yeah.
Don't worry about it, Harry. I got it taken care of. That's basically what Zelensky is saying, you guys. He's got a victory plan. He's not telling us the plan. It's more like concepts of a plan, like this meme going around.
Do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan.
Okay, those are the kind of memes that are served to me because I have 3 kids that are in sports. Like, how are you going to handle this? Concepts of a plan. That's basically Zelensky's. I'm enjoying those memes very much. Now, I am not enjoying, though, learning that Zelensky's victory plan basically is to beg the U.S. for money. That's the plan. Got it?
Okay.
That's a surprise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
We're
$8
all
billion.
about the memes today. We're having too much fun.
Who's in the White House? President Biden somehow came out of like his coffin this weekend and was like, yeah, $8 more billion for Ukraine. I'll do that.
Right. Yeah.
It's like that's been the plan all along. So you have to ask, like, if that's been the plan all along, that's the plan they've been going with. The plan isn't working. So what is the plan moving forward? More of plan A.
More of the plan.
More of the plan.
Einstein would say that that's the definition of insanity, right? Mm-hmm. Just keep repeating the same thing over, hoping for a different outcome.
Right. Now, I would like to see a presidential candidate who says, no, get lost. But we don't have that. Both candidates say they will, in fact, meet with this troll. Word to either candidate, tell the truth about Zelensky and the war to the American people and tell him to pound sand and make him agree to a peace deal and say, we're not going to give you any more guns, weapons, or money. And then maybe people stop dying. We don't have either candidate doing those things. Only President Trump said he would negotiate peace. But that negotiation of peace does not really involve giving more money to Zelensky. So he basically is like a door-to-door salesman. No offense to door-to-door salesmen who are doing honest work. Zelensky is a con doing that job. Here is his big announcement of the plan. You can read it yourself. It's full of nonsense. He said on Monday that the plan was 90% ready, but he must have really pulled some all-nighters because now he says it's good to go. Mostly that plan, if you read it, is to get more weapons and training and air defenses. I don't know where they're going to get the military to carry out this plan because most of their male population is dead, but he thinks that he can pull it off. He's saying there's no alternative to peace. I don't even understand what that means. He's saying that if we don't do this, Russia keeps moving, even though Russia has never said that. So it's bullshit. But let's review, for those of you who are new, why his plan is bullshit, why his war rhetoric is nonsense. Since no one else is going to tell the truth about Ukraine, including President Trump, he has the opportunity to. So since no one else is going to tell the truth about the war in Ukraine, I will do it.
I hate to do it, but I will do it.
Okay, I hate to do it, but I will do it because no one's telling you the truth. So again, let's refer back to the war map of Ukraine. Here, the territory that is red and dark gray are the regions that have been attacked by Ukraine since the 2014 coup, either because they are aligned with Russia or because they are ethnic Russians. Innocent people live there. The Ukrainian military has been attacking them in violent and unspeakable ways, killing civilians for a decade, so much so that in 2015, the International Monetary Fund warned them that it would stop lending them money unless they stopped spending $1 million per day attacking their own people, but they never did stop. In fact, in 2022, as attacks in that region escalated, supported by the U.S. and NATO's money for weapons, 5 mayors in those regions asked Russia to come and protect them, and Russian parliament overwhelmingly voted to do that. It was not Putin's invasion. It was not an unprovoked attack. Ukraine should not get that land back because those people consider themselves Russian and they voted. No innocent Ukrainian men should have to fight on that border to reclaim this territory. Now, all Ukraine has done is succeeded at getting people killed. So here is what I say to Zelensky's plan, and I wish to God our elected officials would do the same when this plan hits our shores next week. But many people don't feel that way. Zelensky has been scheduled to address the UN on September 24th, so he will get a chance to deliver this plan.
Good. I can't wait to hear him speak.
Yeah, so let us know what you think of that. We have more news to get to. So that is the news on Russia. Honey, can you do the next clip because I have to run an errand?
Okay. Yeah, the next clip. Coming up here, we're going to talk about Jerome Powell blaming migrants for unemployment. So, just when you think the great replacement theory, the liberal media loves to tell you, that's a total conspiracy theory. Yes. Jerome Powell yesterday at the podium just let the cat out of the bag and admitted something that's going to really piss off a lot of liberals. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And we're also going to talk about the United Nations plan to run the world. And that is going to be unfolded. I know a lot of people think, that's got to be a conspiracy theory, right? But then all you need to do is look at their drafts of their plan, which is a pact for the future, which is coming up in this weekend. They're going to vote on this pact for the future. They've released multiple drafts of it, and it's terrifying about what they're planning to do with you around around the environment, from your carbon footprint to what's next for a pandemic. What are your plans for keeping you home during a lockdown? We need a United Nations body that's going to supersede world governments. That's what they're voting on this weekend, and no one's talking about it. It's being totally ignored, but we're going to talk about it, and we've read the documents. We'll talk about that coming up in just a second.
I'm back. I had to run an errand, which was to sneeze.
Okay.
So I didn't want to do that. My allergies have been awful lately. I don't know if anybody else, when the seasons have changed, but I was like, I'm going to sneeze.
It's so funny. She walks by all morning sneezing like crazy, and I'm like, I'm good. It's the weirdest thing.
Oh, it must be nice.
I know. I don't understand it.
That's not a sensitive thing to say to your wife.
I don't understand. I don't get it. My mom, growing up in Pennsylvania, she would sneeze like 35 times. Like when we'd wake, I hear the alarm get off, get ready for school, and then I hear my mom start sneezing like 35 times. And I was like, I don't get these people.
Okay.
I don't get these people.
Don't brag, you non-allergy sufferer. It's not nice. Okay, before we talk about...
Never too late to get them, Clayton. You better be careful.
You might get some mysterious powder on your pillow. You'll see.
If I go to a Trump rally...
Just think about what happened when David came out there. Like, he immediately got allergies. He'd never had allergies before, and he was like 2 weeks of just terrible allergies.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Just I've got a really strong constitution.
No, you don't. You get poison ivy if you're within a 1 mile radius of it.
If I'm within a mile of poison ivy, look out.
Okay.
Can have an itchy
Anyway,
arm for the next few weeks.
we don't need to argue in front of our audience. It makes them uncomfortable. I apologize.
They love it. We're a married couple. That's what we do.
Okay.
All right.
Before we talk about Jerome Powell, though, we're going to talk to you about our friends over at American Financing, because the Biden-Harris economy has been a major burden on the average American. Wages are flat, expenses are up. It's very hard to manage and pay all the bills without grabbing for credit cards. And if you're a homeowner and you're frustrated with that cycle, then take 10 minutes to learn what American Financing has to teach you. Basically, they teach you to leverage bad debt for good debt. They teach you how to get out of terrible debt in order to build wealth by using what you may already have in your home's equity. So they can give you a free report if you head on over to americanfinancing.net/redacted, or if you just call them and say, this is something I'm interested in learning, I'm hurting like everybody else, then they will teach you. You can call them at 866-890-8434. They're saving their average customers $800 a month plus mortgage payments, so you can get some time off of your mortgage payment and make some breathing room for yourself. So again, visit americanfinancing.net/redacted.
A lot of people in the chat saying local honey. Yes, the local honey.
Yeah.
You got to get some local honey in your tea, or just eat it straight, right?
Just like a teaspoon of it. But that has to be several months in the making. So I'm just acclimating to a new climate.
Dean Thompson says he suffers the same with the poison ivy. So he's on my camp too.
He's on Team Poison Ivy.
He's on Team Poison Ivy.
I can pick up poison ivy in my hands, and if it touches like the softer skin, like I might get like a bump or two, but that's it. That's all that happens when I.
Wow, you're like the Wolverine.
That's like a superpower, man. That's crazy. Yeah. Where were you when I was at camp 20 years ago or whatever?
I was hiding in the poison ivy.
Right. You would have been great at like capture the flag. Right. Where's the flag hidden? Oh, Philip has it, and he's in a patch of poison ivy. Foiled again.
That would be like a ridiculous other excuse from the FBI. Like, why didn't you see those shooters in the bushes? Well, it was poison ivy. We thought nobody would be there because,
right. Sloped roofs, shrubbery, poison ivy.
Would be Philip.
Stop. These are the things that stop the Secret Service in their tracks.
Right. Okay, that novel another time. Are migrants leading to large unemployment numbers? Well, according to Fed Chair Jerome Powell, yes, in fact, they are. This is something the Democrats don't want to admit, but in his announcement this week, Powell said this is something they're tracking as they try to avoid recession. They have to look at joblessness, and joblessness is worse because of an influx of migrants. Watch.
Job creation, it depends on the inflows, right? So if you're having millions of people come into the labor force and you're creating 100,000 jobs, you're going to see unemployment go up. So it really depends on what's the trend underlying the volatility of people coming into the country. We understand there's been quite an influx across the borders, and that has actually been one of the things that's allowed unemployment rate to rise, and the other thing is just the slower hiring rate, which is something we also watch carefully. So it does depend on what's happening on the supply side.
Oh, interesting.
Influx across the border.
The people. So these are. What he's saying is these are all legal migrants. These are all legal migrants who are coming here with. No, they're not. Let's call them what they are, which is illegal immigrants. They are not legal migrants.
Right.
They can dance around this all they want. But the truth is out there, and he said it under his breath. You can tell he didn't really want to have to admit this on camera. Mm-hmm. There we have it.
Yes, he said that. And it stands to reason, right? It's actually a pretty reasonable thing to assume that when you flood the market with new workers, then existing workers will suffer. Duh. Right? And who? Usually now the people who say that Democrats say, no, migrants are not taking Americans' jobs. They're taking the jobs no one else wants to do. The data doesn't bear that out. And usually the people who say that are keyboard workers, and they are only speaking for themselves. They are not the working class. They are not people who would have to take any job to feed their family. They don't know what that's like. Now, this hurts groups disproportionately, low income and uneducated workers. We discussed this earlier in the week when we discussed the new census data on poverty. Now, Larry Elder is a conservative talk show host. He says that immigration is bringing down wages for Black people. Here's how he describes it.
And by the way, the group most hurt by illegal alien labor are black and brown people living in the inner city, because most of the illegal aliens have little education, if any. They compete against people with high school or less in the inner city. There are probably about 1 million fewer black people working because of the presence of illegal alien labor.
And they bring down
to the tune of $2,000 per year. They put downward pressure on their wages.
That's amazing. And we, of course, confirmed this in our discussions about what's happening in Chicago and the black population there, which are being forced out of their jobs, being forced out of their towns, being forced out of their homes, essentially, to illegal immigrants in Chicago.
Well, what he says is probably there are about 1 million fewer black people working as a result of illegal immigration and downward pressure on wages of about $2,000 per year. Well, there's data to back this up. Now, this is data from 2009. From economists from Harvard, the University of Chicago, and UC San Diego. It showed way back in 2009 that even a 10% increase in the labor market would bring down black wages by 2.5%. So that bears out. And plus increase unemployment for black men by 5.8%, which then increases incarceration rates of blacks by 1.3%. Not because it's anything to do with black men being inherently criminal, but as economist Thomas Sowell points out, because populations of young men with no gainful employment and idle time has never led society to anywhere good. As the biblical proverb goes, idle hands do the devil's work, right? The same trend applies to Latinos and working white class communities, American citizens or residents, people who are here legally. Those groups of people get pushed out with an influx of workforce. Now, illegals are not taking programming jobs in Silicon Valley, clearly. It's unskilled laborers that they will hurt the most. Yet ABC News says this is just a Trump talking point. They got their own economist to say that. This is wrong, their economist says, and black unemployment is just fine. They said it was the lowest it's ever been since Trump took office in April of 2023. Well, let's look at the data on black unemployment, because the U.S. Bureau of Statistics shows that black unemployment trended down during the Trump years, spiked during the pandemic, obviously, and then recovered miraculously. But it has been trending back up during the Biden years. Now, clearly, illegal immigration is not the only thing at play here. There are many factors at play into economic unemployment of black people. And you can see that unemployment trended down for black people, for blacks during the Obama years as well, but then continued during the Trump years. So this is a complex story, and it can't just be attributed to illegal or even legal migration, because Obama, in fact, deported more people than any other president. In fact, he was known as the deporter in chief. The point here is that Powell is acknowledging what Democrats do not want to, in that an influx of unskilled labor does hurt American citizens and legal residents. And even if the media is telling you that it's not hurting you, people know better. They know what they feel. They know what they can buy. And in fact, the inflation that's hurting them even worse, whether they have a job or not. They're done being told that they're fine, but the media just doesn't get it. Look at this New York Magazine headline. It says, why do black and Hispanic voters like Trump? They're asking as if it's an existential question, like they really don't want to bend their minds to understand it. Maybe because he's at least acknowledging what they experience instead of telling them that they do not experience it. So someone should ask Vice President Harris how she would respond to working class people who are losing their jobs to an influx of workers, as the Fed chief has just acknowledged. Now, when she's asked about the economy and American workers, she kind of gives the same robotic response about how she just loves people's ambitions and dreams. That's really all we get. I just hear this over and over. I just love Americans' ambitions and dreams. And that's about it. So she wants you to dream about working. She doesn't really want you to do it, though. Watch.
Why is joy important to you to insert into this election? And what do you make of Republicans using that as a way to suggest that you're not a serious candidate?
There are some times when your adversaries will try and turn your strength into a weakness. Don't you let them. Don't you let them. I find joy in the American people. I find joy and optimism in what I see to be our future and our ability to invest in it. I find joy in the ambition of the people. I find joy in the dreams of the people. I find joy in building community. And I think we should all find joy and have a sense of optimism about who we are as Americans and what we mean to each other and what we can do to lift each other up.
Well, words to live by.
Yeah.
That'll help me get a job. That'll help me get a job.
Ambition, dreams, and optimism. She wants you to have those things, but she doesn't seem to have very much to say about how she will facilitate those things.
I would love for there to be a town hall meetings like we used to have back in the day with the presidential candidates. Very often the town hall meetings, the debates were always the best because you could get real questions from real audience members. Like we have one here from our chat. Stealth Mode writes, Redacted, I tried to get a job picking strawberries here in Florida and they would not hire me because I'm not a native Spanish speaker. This is so true. So imagine that's asking Kamala Harris that question during a town hall debate. You know, I was turned away from an American job because I was not a Spanish speaker and I'm a citizen, and they hired an illegal immigrant as a result of that. Like, what are you going to do to stop this? Well, I have a lot of joy. I appreciate your joy to want to work.
Well, the data now shows that unemployment is high and the Fed is worried about this, and they're worried about the influx of workers from abroad when American citizens cannot find jobs. Bottom line. That's it. Doesn't matter whose fault it is. What are we going to do about it? It's a nonpartisan issue. It's hurting everybody. So anyway, let us know if your ambitions allow you to see that data or not.
I'm enjoying the chat today a lot. I always enjoy you guys. But Go Start says she's unburdened by concepts. Unburdened by what is.
That's
unburdened. Nice. Yeah, that's indeed the case. Thank you guys for subscribing to the channel, being a part of our community here. Again, I just should remind you guys tomorrow, first of all, we have a Redacted Plus club, and tomorrow we are going to do a special live stream just for our Redacted members. So same time, we're going to be hanging out. And so if you are a Redacted Plus member, please join us for that private live stream. So it'll be fun on a Friday to kind of hang out with everybody. But we've got more news to get to today. We're going to talk about the United Nations and their pact for the future. What does it mean for all of us? This is quietly being voted on this weekend, and no one is talking about it. It's been redacted. In fact, they're hiding the final documents from us, from even allowing us to read them. So we'll talk about that coming up here in just a second. But first, America, listen up. The world is getting more unpredictable by the day. Political insanity, rumors of civil war, an unstable stock market, and now the looming threat of a new global health emergency. Did you know there's a bird flu summit also happening in October? So we've got the UN Pact for the Future summit this weekend and a bird flu summit in October. It's eerily reminiscent of Event 201 that foreshadowed the COVID pandemic. And get this, the first topic on the agenda, mass fatality management planning. Can you imagine going to one of those seminars? They're actually planning this in DC, guys. But here's the good news. You don't have to be scared if you are prepared. The wellness company created the medical emergency kit. Every home in America should have one of these things right now, just in your, what do you call it? Medicine cabinet. They're packed with life-saving medicines like ivermectin, amoxicillin, even a Z-Pak, all backed by experts like our friend Dr. Peter McCullough. Imagine this. No more frantic searches for a doctor, no more emergency rooms, waiting rooms. People were turned away from the hospital if they had something other than COVID. And people died as a result of that. Imagine being able to have this in your home when you need it. You should just have it as an emergency backup, just like having an emergency generator in your house. You buy it one time and keep it in your medicine kit. That's what we've done. Go to twc.health/redacted to save $30 at checkout. twc.health/redacted and use that code redacted to save $30 off when you check out. Well, most Americans have no idea what's happening right now in New York City. Over the weekend, the United Nations member states are gathering in the Big Apple at the UN headquarters for the historic Summit of the Future, as they're calling it. Their intention at this summit is to sign what's being called the Pact for the Future. So these globalists are getting together and signing something that perhaps you didn't sign off on. What's actually in this pact for the future? Let's ask Derek Brose, investigative journalist from The Last American Vagabond, who's been in New York and covering what's going on at the summit, and is going to break this all down for us. Now, you've been covering this for a few months, looking, Derek, at the previews, the draft resolutions of this pact for the future. Why should we be concerned what these guys are voting on right now?
Yeah, thank you for that, Clayton. So the reason Americans and really people all over the world need to know about this is because in minor resistance way, all of the major nations you would expect are on board. The Pact for the Future is calling for a few main things. The first part is to include an emergency platform, and this emergency platform would allow UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to declare an emergency at any point. It's very similar to what we saw in the language of the pandemic agreement, the pandemic treaty, that people were resistant, but unfortunately there's less awareness about this. What the language says specifically, that if there are quote, global shocks, which shock multiple regions of the world, then they could invoke this emergency platform, which would give the UN more powers to act. Now, what exactly would come from that, we don't know, because unfortunately, we have seen 3 drafts that have been released previously, the most recent one on August 27th. But as of this recording and as we're going into the summit, there has been no final version released to the public. And I think this is being done on purpose. So that's one, of the scary, worrisome aspects, is we're not even seeing what they potentially sign, even though we really have no say. These people are unelected. So they're not even letting the public know what's going on. But the versions we have seen before specifically state that there needs to be an emergency platform. And when they talk about shocks, this could include a new claimed pandemic. This could include war, economic turmoil, famine. Really, it's an endless. Obviously, climate change is on that list, but it's a pretty endless list of whatever they want to claim. They then invoke this emergency platform as part of the Pact for the Future. And then what comes next, none of us really know, but definitely what they are trying to do is to give the UN more power. There's discussions around UN 2.0, that it's time to remake the UN because, we're at the 80th anniversary. We're nearing the 80th anniversary of the UN, and it's just not doing what it used to do. There's also, of course, this whole thing is a major push towards a global government. They don't like to use those terms. They prefer multilateralism or global governance. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing. It's a more empowered UN to act, to compel nations to do whatever they want. And so we might see some major steps towards remaking the UN this weekend as well. And then the other important aspect that we can get into further is the financial aspect. They keep discussing the need for a new Bretton Woods moment. And of course, Bretton Woods is the post-World War II creation of the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. Those are known as multilateral development banks. This language of the draft definitely says we need to empower and to increase and to transform these multilateral development banks. And for those who know the history of this, or if you've read John Perkins' Confessions of an Economic Hitman, you know that those banks have been used to rob and extort third world developing countries around the world for decades now and get them in debt and take their resources. So they want to inject more financial resources into this. And part of that as well is to transform the financial system. In my view, this is just another step of the Great Reset that we saw announced in 2020.
So many things to unpack here, Derek. I want to let's touch on the financial piece of this. I think you're absolutely right about this. As we see this past week, of course, the Fed rate cuts in the United States. This is the decline. This is really, to my mind, the end of the Bretton Woods Agreement in a lot of ways. You're seeing, of course, the moves towards BRICS currency right now move away from the United States dollar as the hegemonic power to use the IMF, the World Bank, to bully nations around the world. And a lot of countries have had enough of this, and they're moving away from this. So it would be interesting to see the players behind the scenes here at the United Nations, who's trying to push and make this push for maybe a Bretton Woods Agreement 2.0. Is it the United States? Is it Russia? Is it Brazil? Is it the BRICS nations? I think this is a really interesting piece of the puzzle here. What do you make of that?
Well, you're correct on including the BRICS conversation there, because next month will be the BRICS summit, which we should keep our eye on as well. It does seem from some of the players that there is an effort to push away from the U.S. being the singular power driving force within the UN, and depending on your perspective, that might be a good or a bad thing. But I do think that that's part of this effort. There, many of the discussions and the conversations I've watched leading up to the summit have been about trying to give voice to other countries. And, that doesn't inherently mean anything negative per se, but I do think it is a shift away from trying to have the U.S. being the only controlling power. Now, of course, if that goes towards China being the controlling power, then that could be problematic. And I don't think overall, though, whether it's the UN or the U.S. driving the vehicle or China driving the vehicle or Russia, that it's going to be good for the average person on the ground level.
Well, and the average person on the ground level when it comes to these crazy climate policies or whatever lockdown procedures they want to put in place for their next pandemic piece of the puzzle, it's only going to benefit the elites, and we will all be screwed as a result of it. So I was going through the draft resolution of the August 28th, most recent draft resolution of this pact for the future. And of course, they want to accelerate the Paris Climate Accords agreement, trying to push for this reduction of 1.5 degrees Celsius, even though there's zero evidence that would in fact be bad for the Earth, and in fact zero evidence that we're even going to hit a sort of a disastrous moment. We have this world doomsday clock that the King Charles stood behind and rolled out, that in like 7 years or whatever, we're going to hit doomsday if we don't get back this 1.5 degrees Celsius. So they want to accelerate that plan for all of us. What will that mean? I mean, what will that mean for the average person traveling? Carbon passports, like what is your carbon footprint? Oh, you've traveled too much this month. That's where my mind goes.
I think that's absolutely where this is going, Clayton. And you mentioned King Charles. Well, I should remind everybody that back when he was Prince Charles in 2020, he was part of the initial announcement of the Great Reset, as well as the head of the IMF. This is, as I said, just a continuation of those same policies, and climate change, the climate narrative absolutely factors into this. I'll also mention that some of the key players behind this who are going to be present would include the World Economic Forum as well as the Club of Rome. They have been calling for the UN to declare a planetary emergency as part of the Pact for the Future at the Summit of the Future. Again, we haven't seen the final language to know if that is going to be included in there. We know there's a discussion of an emergency platform, but the Club of Rome has been calling for a declaration of a planetary emergency since at least 2019, before COVID even happened. And they've been through the various funding mechanisms. There's an organization called the Stimson Center, which is funded by the Rockefeller Foundation and the Gates Foundation, and others, the Climate Governance Commission. All these bodies have been calling on the UN to declare a planetary emergency at the Summit of the Future. That, to me, is the biggest concern. I don't know if it's going to happen just yet, but they absolutely are trying to say, look, we're already in that state of emergency. Go ahead, declare it now. And then again, who knows what powers they try to grab once that happens. You sort of hinted at some of those things: carbon wallets, limiting of movement and limiting of what you can put on your dinner plate, things like that. We know those things have been discussed and are on the table. I fear that if this does go forward, and of course, there's not too many people paying attention to this. I'm searching every single day, even in the corporate media. It's almost as if they don't want to even talk about it until it's done, so the public doesn't have a chance to sort of rally and push back. But that's part of why I'm going to New York City, to be there live in person reporting. I will actually be able to be inside the UN building for at least 2 days. I did get access, and we're going to be rallying outside the building. But I think it's purposely being downplayed and ignored, except for those sort of key players who are kind of already in that world. But the public at large has no idea this is even happening.
Well, hopefully we can bring some awareness to this a few days ahead of this summit in New York City over the weekend. I'll get you out of here on this, Derek, which is the pandemic piece of this. So we talk about the global health emergency. They're going to declare a global financial emergency. They'll declare a global environmental emergency. And then, of course, they'll declare a global pandemic emergency for new lockdown procedures and all of this. And this is why they were keeping, of course, the WHO's latest pandemic treaty quiet, and we weren't allowed to see draft resolutions and changes to the WHO pandemic treaty ahead of time, right? It was sort of like almost released right at the day they were voting on these things. So we didn't get advanced copies for a lot of these things because they were deeply troubling and deeply worrying. Do you think that's what's going on here as it relates to global health emergency?
Absolutely. I think it's the same tactics that they are trying to keep it under wraps. And thankfully there is, as I kind of alluded to earlier, some pushback from some of the developing nations. I wouldn't say they have the same concerns we have, but there definitely are developing nations, Cuba and some African nations that I've seen, who have spoken up and say, we're being totally ignored. Our voices are not being heard on this. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to sign, but I do think that this late release of the draft, if we even see the final version before it's signed, is so that there can't be enough time for people to kind of put up resistance and organize against it. And I do want to mention this just for anybody at home who is maybe feeling disempowered and wants some solutions. I'm going to be in New York City with an activist named Dan Aston Gregory, who's coming out from the UK. He's a great guy. He runs the organization called Free Humanity. People can go to freehumanity.org/pact for the future. And there's just a simple petition that they've put together. More than a petition, it's a call to action and just calling for organizations, journalists, media outlets, et cetera, individuals to put their name down and say, we don't consent to this. We don't abide by whatever the UN signs. That's something people can get behind. They can put a little action. The other thing I'll just mention briefly, Clayton, is that the weekend after this, we are organizing what we call the People's Reset. We're calling it Our Summit for Our Future. It's a 3-day event live in the UK, but it's also going to be streamed for free on our website at thegreaterreset.org. And for 3 days, just like they're meeting for 3 days, we're talking about solutions, but instead of from the technocratic top-down control paradigm, we're talking about bottom-up solutions, growing your own food, getting off big tech, mental, physical, spiritual health, all the different things that we think can actually empower people now so that we can put our mind and our focus on what we want our 2030 to look like instead of just only reacting and responding to what the UN or the World Economic Forum are doing, kind of inviting people to take the power back into their hands and really see how we can proactively drive our future. So people can check that out at thegreaterreset.org. It's happening the 27th to the 29th of this month.
Wonderful. So many of our audience says, this is so frustrating. What can we do? Well, here's something that you can actually do. You can be, a citizen activist and take to the streets. You can be a part of this. Sign this petition. Activate local media. Talk to local politicians. Make them aware that this is even happening. It's amazing that the UN is keeping this entirely quiet. And in the rumblings of a UN 2.0, like what does that look like? That's unbelievable. Derek Brose has done some great work on this. We really appreciate it, Derek. Be safe there and check back with us as the summit unfolds. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Clayton.
Thanks, Derek. And Colorado Watch here in our chat just says, pandemic emergency powers were just a dress rehearsal for martial law. I mean, it's terrifying. It's terrifying that they won't even allow us to see this frickin' stuff, right? They're keeping it hidden because they know once we see it, that we'll be outraged by it. So they don't want us to see it. Globalist cabal that runs everything. It's really terrifying. It's really terrifying. And it's happening. It's amazing to me in 2024. It's all happening right out here in the open right now. I mean, you have the guy that shoots at Trump, allegedly. His body is then cremated almost immediately. His apartment is wiped clean. The guy had no silverware in his apartment. Like, very, very interesting circumstances. Like, where was his cell phone traveling in the days before this all happened? Nope. No discussion about it. Just move on. Nothing to see here. We got it under control. You will comply with our plans. And the media will spoon feed you every step of the way. So I saw Owen Schroyer talking about the media. I was watching him last night, and he was saying, what you have to understand about the mainstream media is that they don't know anything. Most of the people that work in the mainstream media, they've never been actual journalists. They're just on TV. They've never done anything out to investigate anything. They're just handed talking points, and they just read them. And they have to give like a little reaction, to something like, oh, yeah, that's really scary. Okay, over to your weather report now. Like, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And this is the mass media that's serving all this garbage up to us. You wonder why so many people in the United States and around the world are misinformed. I mean, just look across Europe, the mass media there, like CNN Portugal. Look at the BBC. It's awful, awful propagandic garbage right now. Psychopaths, global psychopath emergency ad says in our chat. Yes, exactly. The blind consumer. They are actors. They are tools, Linda says. Exactly. They are actors and they are tools. Marco Mata says, Owen Schroyer and InfoWars, always excellent. Yes, they do great work, of course. I mean, there's so few independent media out there. You might not agree with us and different, independent media. I mean, we hang on by the support of you guys. Honestly, it's like the support of our viewers. This is a free show, and we have a few sponsors here on the show, but we don't have billionaire corporate backers like News Corp and all of these other companies do. So you just watch when you see ABC News, you see these other people with all of these billions of dollars from the biopharmaceutical complex and money from Raytheon and Lockheed. I literally saw an ad for Raytheon during one of the Sunday shows. Like, really? People got to wake up.
Buy from Raytheon. Like, what am I? If I like, can I go buy anything from Raytheon? Like, why are you advertising? Get out of my face.
It's all branding. You know, they don't want you to buy anything. It's just like corporate branding. You know, Lockheed developing the weapons of the future today. You know, Raytheon. You know, bringing drones. You know, to the military-industrial complex, and we're going to advertise during Meet the Press on a Sunday morning on NBC. Like, that's their audience. The neocons are watching that crap, you know, and so they know who their audience is. The neocons and the warmongers are watching that stuff. It just wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. When you see it, you see it. That's right. Magellan USA says redacted rebels will not eat the bugs. Yeah, exactly. So I should mention we do have our Redacted Plus community. Again, this show is totally free. You can watch us on YouTube and Rumble and X for free. But we do have a Redacted Plus community if you'd like to join us for the price of a cup of coffee once a month. We, as I mentioned yesterday here, we're going to be really ramping things up over on the Locals community, and that's our private community to hang out with the Redacted Rebels. So tomorrow we're doing a special live stream for any Redacted Rebel who wants to join us on our Plus Club tomorrow. It's all you need to do to sign up if you want to become a part of it is go to redacted.inc. And you can click right there, join Redacted Plus today. And like I said, for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can join us there. We're going to be doing all sorts of special live streams, special interviews and coverage, and a lot of big things that we have planned. David and I had a nice meeting about it the other day, about all the things we want to do over on the Plus Club. So please come join us tomorrow. We'll do a live stream tomorrow on a Friday. Can you believe it? A Friday special. And it'd be great to see all the Redacted Rebels over there. Again, you don't have to be a part of it. The show is totally free, but if you are a Redacted Rebel, we'd love to have you join us over there as well. And that's about it. And I guess, we'll be streaming. We'll send out a note on our Locals community, so don't worry. You'll get the notification and all that. We'll make sure everyone who's a member will find out about it, so we'll post that for you guys. Don't worry about it. So that's going to do it for us here on this Thursday. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening. 47 days away from Election Day in the United States of America. It's crazy time. It's a clown world that we're living in. Have a great night, everyone. We'll see you back here tomorrow.